Okay, so this is Freud's big idea. Freud's big idea, it's absolutely fascinating, um, is that the reason we go to, is that people have psychological desires that are in their unconscious. They're actually hidden from themselves. See, Freud believes all little kids want to kill their to kill their dads and fuck their moms, but that they repress it, they push it down. They don't want to think about that because that's against the rules, and so they go, "Arr," and then they deal with it in other ways by marrying someone like their mom and hating authority figures or whatever it is. And there's all kinds of different variations on this. So the point is that but they still have somewhere in the back of their brain they want to, even though they wouldn't admit it. They're not even aware. But what they really want to do is fuck their mom and kill their dad. Freud says when you show them Sophocles by Oedipus, they say that's a fucking cool play. Because it's right, people for 2,500 years have liked this play. And it raises a question, which is why would anybody want to see a play where somebody kills their dad and has sex with their mom? Freud's got an answer. And Freud's answer is that deep down, that's what they want. And that the play is like a safe space that allows them to experience that fucked up fantasy, which, if they said it out loud, people would be angry at them because it's so gross and disturbing. But if you go to see, so it's wrong to do that in real life. But the stories give us a chance to act out these fucked up fantasies in a safe space where nobody gets hurt. And he says that's why people like Oedipus. Now, and I'm gonna continue on with him for a little bit before coming to some big examples of my own. The action of the play consists in nothing other than the process of revealing, with cunning delays, never mounting excitement, a process that can be likened to the work of psychoanalysis, that Oedipus himself is the murderer of Laius, the king, and further that he is the son of the murdered man and of Jocasta. Appalled at the abomination which he has unwittingly perpetrated, Oedipus blinds himself and forsakes his home. The oracle has been fulfilled. Oedipus Rex, I can't even read that. I'm sorry. What does it say? Oedipus Rex is what is known as a tragedy of destiny. Its tragic effect is said to lie in the contrast between the supreme will of the gods and the vain attempts of mankind to escape the evil that threatens them. The lesson which it is said the deeply moved spectator should learn from the tragedy is submission to the divine will and realization of his own impotence. Modern dramatists have accordingly tried to achieve a similar tragic effect by weaving the same contrast into a plot invented by themselves, but the spectators have looked on unmoved while the curse or an oracle was fulfilled in spite of all the efforts of some innocent man. Later tragedians of destiny have failed in their effect. So he says, some people think the point of the play is that you're supposed to learn that, God has plans for you that are bigger than you know, and that you don't have control over it, so just deal with your lack of control. But Freud says that's not what it is, because lots of people make plays about that. And people don't like those plays. So it must be something else. Well, what is it? Well, Freud says it's you want to fuck your mom and you want to kill your dad, and the play lets you do that. And so that's why people like it. So he says Oedipus Rex moves a modern audience no less than the contemporary Greek one. The explanation can only be that the effect does not lie in the contrast between destiny and human will, but is to be looked for in particular nature of the material in which the contrast is exemplified. So it's the story, the specifics of the story that people like, not the shit about the gods. It's that he fucks his mom and kills his dad. There must be something which makes a voice within us ready to recognize the compelling force of destiny in the Oedipus, what we can dismiss as merely arbitrary. Um, okay, and then I'm sorry. He then goes on to some other examples that I don't really want to get into. Here, his destiny moves us because it might have been ours, because the oracle laid the same curse upon us as before a birth upon him. It is the fate of all of us, perhaps, to direct our first sexual impulse toward our mother, and our first hatred and our first murderous wish against our father. Our dreams convince us that it is so. King Oedipus, who slew his father Laius but married his mother Jocasta, merely shows us the fulfillment of our childhood wishes. But more fortunate than he, we meanwhile have succeeded, insofar as we have not become psychoneurotics, in detaching our sexual impulses from our mothers and forgetting the jealousy of our fathers. So most people just don't even remember that. Here is one of those primeval wishes of our childhood have been fulfilled, and we shrink back from him with the whole force of repression by which those wishes have, since that time, been held down by us. What the poet, as he unravels the past, brings to light the guilt of Oedipus, he is at the same time compelling us to recognize our own inner minds, which those same impulses, though suppressed, are still found. So when you see these things on stage, you're forced to confront the fact that these thoughts are in your mind. It provides a mirror for our innermost desires, desires we don't even know we have. Okay. While the poet, as he unravels the past, brings to light the guilt of Oedipus, he at the same time is compelling us to recognize our own inner minds in which those same the contrast with which the closing chorus leaves us confronted. Fix on Oedipus your eyes, who solve the dark enigma, noblest champion and most wise, like a star his envied fortune, blah, 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 strikes a warning at ourselves and our pride, at us since our childhood have grown so wise and so mighty in our own eyes. Like Oedipus, we live in ignorance of these wishes, repugnant to morality, right? We have these terrible desires, but we don't even know we do, because they're so against morals. That have been forced upon us by nature, and after their revelation, we may all of us seek to close our eyes to the scenes of our childhood. There's an unmistakable indication in the text of Sophocles' tragedy itself that the legend of Oedipus sprang from some primeval dream material, which had as its content the distressing disturbance of a child's relationship to his parents owing to the first stirrings of sexuality. At the point where Oedipus, though he is not yet enlightened, has begun to feel troubled by his recollection of the oracle, Jocasta consoles him by referring to a dream which many people dream. As she thinks it has no meaning. Many a man ere now in dreams has lain with her who bore him. He suffers least pain, troubles not his mind. So Freud really thinks that both Oedipus is coming out of that same. Freud thinks he's describing something that's been true since the beginning of time, and that's why it's true of people like the play today, and it's why the play was written in the first place. Today, just as then, many men dream of having sexual relations with their mother and speak of the fact with indignation and astonishment. It is clearly the key to the tragedy and the complement to the dream of the dreamer's father being dead. The story of Oedipus is the reaction of the imagination to these two typical dreams, and just as these dreams, when dreamt by adults, are accompanied by feelings of repulsion, so too the Oedipus legend must include the horror and self-punishment. So because you know you're not supposed to have these thoughts, when Oedipus does it, he stabs himself in the eyes. That's what makes it satisfying, is because you feel like you should get in trouble for having done these things, because you would have gotten in trouble had you killed your dad and fucked your mom. Okay, so we got to the end of the Freud, but we're going to be spending a lot more time with Freud because I got a pile of examples I want to go through. So let's do some examples. Freud says that the reason stories are popular is because they find there are desires and beliefs and wishes that you have in your unconscious. You're not even aware that they're there most of the time. And if a movie can latch on to the desires of the audience, the unconscious, fucked up desires of the audience will love the story and they won't know why. And that's Freud's belief, is that the most and this is so. Freud's belief is that the movies reflect the fucked up desires of the audience. That's interesting, because what I like to do is go the other direction. If a movie is really popular, I will watch it. Even if I think it's terrible, I'll watch it because I think it'll tell me something about what's going on in people's brains. So let's go over some examples. Here's a classic one, King Kong. You know King Kong? King Kong, the giant ape who escapes in New York City and causes all kinds of trouble. It's a very famous movie from 1933. It's been remade again and again and again and again. So it's a remakes of King Kong. And there's variations and differences in them, but there's a King Kong story. Well, let's talk about the story of King Kong real quick. What is King Kong fundamentally about? Well, it's about a bunch of white people who travel to an African country. When they get there, they see a living being, King Kong. They kidnap him. They put him in chains. They put him in the bottom of a boat. They sail the boat to America. Why? Because they want King Kong to make money for him. In the movie, it's in abroad. They're going to put him in a show, like a freak show, and people pay money to see him. So they've taken white people took a living creature from Africa, put him in chains, put him in a boat, took him all the way over to America, and they tried to get him to make money for them. He escapes. He destroys the city. He falls in love with a white woman. He kidnaps her, and then is ultimately destroyed. Well, a lot of people have noticed King Kong. It's like, oh, it's a fun adventure story about a giant monkey. No, it's not. It's about American slavery. It's about how white men went to Africa and they kidnapped people there and they put them in chains, and they put them in a boat, and they brought them over here to make money for them. But their biggest fear is that those slaves would break their chains and that they would escape. They would get revenge for the way they were treated, and one of the forms that revenge would take is by seizing white women. King Kong speaks to the racist imagination of America that it doesn't even know that it has. That's why the movie's popular. See you in the next video.